guys, and welcome to another More Than My Size. I'm your host, Nimare, with my awesome, that African butterfly, with my awesome co-host, Alicia.
Yes, also known as AP or APY Blog on everything.
And we are so excited to be back with you guys for another episode today. And today we are talking about size. And I know our show is called More Than My Size, but we're specifically talking about size in the plus size community because there is a wide variety and variance of sizes, but we should kind of all be under the same umbrella, right? Not so much. So I'm going to have Alicia actually kick it off by telling us about a video she saw and why you wanted to bring up this conversation.
Absolutely, you guys. So, as Namadi said, plus should be plus, right? It should all be under the same umbrella. But unfortunately, what should be is not always what is. And so, something caught my eye. Somebody, actually, a couple of people, because I guess my followers know me well enough to know my thought process, sent me a video of a young woman. I believe, let me pull her up. Her name is Charisma Monroe. And she made a video that basically said, no need to further divide the Blessed community. Plus is plus. I have FUPA, I have this, I have fat, blah, blah, blah. Yes, I know about extended plus sizes and how they're less common, less represented. Both that and small fat being an oxymoron can exist. Both that and 0x to 2x being very much plus exist. Well, we all don't need more labels. I get what she was saying, right? But to me, it felt tone deaf. The reality is, yes, fat is fat, right? But privilege exists. And until that privilege is equal across the board, those labels are required for several different reasons. There are boutiques or stores that exist and they say, we carry plus size, right? So if we're all plus and we're all under the umbrella and we're all fat, right? And we all, because she said we all experience similar things, which is a load of bull for several different reasons. But if we all go to a plus size boutique and we're all like, yeah, we're all plus size, but I go in there and my size is not available, that division is made, whether I asked for it or not. So until all clothing options are equal, from the smallest fat to the largest fat, that divide will remain and exist. And those labels, unfortunately, are important, because how am I supposed to know that a store carries my size unless they say we carry extended size? Just because you tell me it's plus doesn't mean it's going to fit my body. And unfortunately, let's not act like smaller fats don't capitalize off of being able to use that plus label, simply because they can't go into mainstream fashion media and be a size 10 or 12 because that's considered too large, unfortunately, for the fashion industry. 8 and below is the standard in the fashion industry. And dare I say, really, it's like a 6 and below. So they can't go over there and, relish in the fame and the glory of being a model over there, but they certainly can come into the plus size spaces, be a smaller fat, be more accepted because they are a smaller fat, have more access to brand deals and partnerships and modeling jobs because the plus size stores cater to their body types. Then they get to run around using the hashtag plus size fashion, plus size this, plus size that. And Drake's out here making songs about how he likes his BBWs. And, this person says they love them thick, but they mean you. They don't mean us. And until that divide is over, okay, until that equality across the board, cry me a river about you understand FUPAs and fat. Yeah. I get it, sis. You experience it, but don't be dismissive. Don't be tone deaf and say, oh, all labels shouldn't apply. We're all plus. Yeah, but that different exists whether we like it or not.
Mm-hmm. And that was the show, everyone, because Alicia just said it all. Like, what is there left to say? No, you're absolutely right. I'm all for being acceptance of plus on all sizes. And I do understand, where the people who are the smaller plus sizes are sometimes looked at as like, oh yeah, they're not really plus. And I get it. Everybody has their own battles to fight, their own insecurities, their own hurdles they have to deal with through life. So, you try not to be dismissive of their plus size journey or struggle, but to say that it is the same as ours is very different, especially because along my way to here, I was there. So I know very much what life was like being in that size where you really are just thicker. And yes, you're plus size. I remember it's probably like a 16, 18. So yeah, that's definitely plus size, but the way I was treated, the way I was looked, the ease with which I could find things, completely different than being over here. So as much as you don't want people to be dismissive of your struggles or plight being smaller plus size, it's just as horrible to be dismissive of the fact that extended sizes people do live in a whole different realm of plus size. We just got to the point where we could stop shopping at Women Within and shop at other places. And not that there's anything wrong with Women Within, but when you're trying to be cute and plus and don't only want to, rock the muumuus and the plain shirts and the whatever, you want fashion options available to you too. And sometimes it's harder to get it in extended sizes. Or when you do get it, it costs a fortune because it's not priced as low as other sizes, regular sizes. There aren't like compatible, like when you think about all the price ranges of retail stores, and there's, lower price, upper price, middle price, and then expensive. There, for the most part, for smaller sizes, they have that range. But when you get into plus sizes, they are now starting to have that range, which is great. There's Fashion Nova, there's, what is it, like Forever 21 now has like a plus line. So there's definitely on the end of like affordable fashions for those who don't have a lot. Yeah, that goes up to 3X, but that's still a world that anyone in extended sizes cannot enter. Our pricing world starts in the middle to more expensive range. I mean, depending on what your size is, like maybe like there's these really cute pair of overalls that I want, and they're like $100 and something bucks. I'm like, I'm not spending that on overalls right now.
Because fat tax is a real thing.
Yeah, like that's for most of the sizes, like skirts, dresses. Like if you want to get not just, and yes, there's affordable stuff, like I was saying, like with Women's Within and other stuff, but when you want to start getting into the cute stuff, our options are very limited and they start kind of pricey. So we do navigate through a different world than your version of plus size, and that should be acknowledged.
Exactly. It's like, oh, we're all fat. It shouldn't be labels. You're absolutely correct. There shouldn't be. But again, that lack of access, that lack of equality is what makes those labels present. And it's what makes them needed right now. A few years back when Universal Standard first dropped their line, the owner, she had a similar stance and she caught a lot of flack because she was just like, she doesn't care about having the plus size label at all. They carry from a size 0 to
yeah, it was actually their overalls I was talking about. They're really
cute. I know you were. I knew you were. So and I understood what she meant. Fashion should just be fashion, but for them and their store, that might actually work because they have done the work to be able to carry the 0 to the largest size. But unfortunately, that is not the universal standard, even if it's theirs.
Right. And I do have to add that even though I'm saying like it's pricey for me and like where my budget is, I'm not saying they need to lower their price. They have absolutely every right to charge that prices, just like how smaller people charge more as well. So I'm not saying like, oh, they have to, but I'm saying we don't have an option of other stores that are like cheaper priced that carry those same sizes as stores like hers and others do.
Right. One of the things that I was thinking about was where she said we all have similar struggles. I really wanted to go into why that's just not true. And I'm going to use an example. When we look at the we're Black, right? Black in America, it should all be equal, it should all be the same. But we know very well within our own culture, there's colorism. Why? Because we know that being lighter skin affords you a privilege, and it's not fair, and it doesn't mean that you believe in that, but how society treats it.
Right.
We know that light-skinned people are more palatable. Racially ambiguous people who they could or could not be Black with a little extra mix in them. Yeah,
they're exotic.
Commercial. Yeah, they're exotic. That's more palatable. So although you're Black and you understand being Black in America, you're different than a darker skinned person's experience. You're going to have a different experience moving through this life in America simply because you're a different shade. Does that make it your fault? No, that's like white people who are born with white privilege. They have it, right? It doesn't mean that they're using it for bad or for good. They just, but acknowledging it doesn't make it wrong. And saying that it exists doesn't mean that it's your fault that it exists. My thing is this: when you have that privilege, use your platform for good, right? Use your platform to be that advocate. Then if you know that you can show up in spaces and be accepted or be more palatable, use your voice to say, hey, you should be including my extended size cisgen. One of the things that you stated is you were smaller at one point, so you understand both sides of the spectrum. Same thing for me. I was not always at this size. I've been from the smallest to the smallest of 14, 15, I'm at 14, 16, 18, 20, to now being currently at a 28. But at some point I was a size 34, 36. So I had definitely been the range of the spectrum, and the way you are treated is different. Did people make comments about my body when I was smaller? Absolutely. Created all sorts of issues for myself. But the reality is, I still had access to certain things. I could go into a doctor's office and sit in a chair. I didn't have to worry about being told, we can't see you here because our imaging sensor equipment isn't large enough to, accommodate your weight. You have to drive out an additional 45 minutes to go someplace else that can assist you. Like, my reality and my experiences have changed drastically from being a smaller fat to a larger fat. So I would
And
never, ever tell somebody or diminish their experience by saying we're all the same. No, we're not. Like,
right.
we're not. And it's okay to say that. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person for acknowledging that your experience is going to be easier than mine. I get it. Society makes you feel like you have to be thin and perfectly curvaceous in all the right places. So when you aren't that, I definitely understand how it can mess with your mind and your view of yourself and make you feel more self-conscious about, oh, I have rolls of fat, this, that, and the third. But the reality is, if you and I got stood next to each other in a bikini, they're not going to be saying the same comments to you that they would me. And that's the part that they have to understand. Like, yeah, as much as you may want it to be la-di-da, kumbaya, let's all hold hands, we're all fat, it's just not the same. It's just
Yeah,
not.
and I hate too that, like, when you are describing the experience of being like extended sizes or anything, it's like, oh well, whose fault is that? It's like, well, no one's pointing fault or blame, or we're not whining. We're not saying like, oh, life is horrible. We're saying this is life.
This is different.
This is how it is. There's a difference between saying like, hey, this is the experience and this is what I go to, through being like, oh, boo-hoo me. We're not saying boo-hoo any more than you or anyone else who's a smaller plus size is saying boo-hoo. You're just saying this is my existence and this is how things could be better for us the way that they are for you. But we do absolutely have two different ways that we are navigating through life. And like you said, it's just like colorism. Like, yes, we're all Black, but depending on your color and your shade of Black, things are just a little bit different for you. It's the same thing with that, especially as we move to people being more accepting of plus size. There's still like, yes, but no. You know what I mean? Like,
Within
yes,
our
to
own
a certain
community
extent.
too. Like,
Right.
let's be real. Within the plus community, that divide exists. And don't for a second think that the divide did not come from someone who had the privilege. It wasn't the fats coming up and saying we're different. No, it was y'all who were like, oh, I'm fat, but I'm not fat, or I'm fat, but I'm not big like her. It's like yeah, I'm Black, but I'm a good Black. You know what I mean? I'm a
You're
good,
right. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's like
you're cooling.
respectability politics, but
Right.
instead of it being on like the words and your color, it's on size, and it's like, yes, but I'm this, but I'm that, even though you're plus. And at the end of the day, people don't like fat people. Like, they don't like fat people. I'm sorry to break it to you. You're still
Fat
within that world.
in
But
that world.
people who are smaller fat definitely do often make a point of saying like, well, I'm not that fat. Like, that the divide is there. It just is what it is. And even like you and I, when we are talking about dating, we were talking about someone recently, and I was like, well, he said on one of his things that he likes thick girls, but I don't think he means thick. I think he means like thick. So then we did our investigations and figured out what he meant, and we were correct. When he said thick, he meant like thin fat to thicker, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but just know that even when someone says like, oh, I like big girls, there's usually a cutoff for what they mean when they say I like big girls,
Oh
which is
yeah.
fine. Everyone should have their preference. That's totally cool. But like, just acknowledge that you being smaller fat are still well within the average preference for most people. So even in that world and dynamic of dating, like, totally different experience.
One of the things that I'll note is sometimes I find that the smaller bodies in the plus industry, they love to talk about, we're all fighting the same fight, so on and so forth. And then they'll go and do collaborations with major brands. and that brand, that collaboration, even though they're a plus size influencer, will stop at a 3x or a 2x. And I'm like, so you guys will acknowledge that, like, oh yeah, it should be fair, blah, blah, blah. But you'll go into a collaboration. Are you pushing back? Are you asking for extended sizes when you do your release? Are you coming out and saying, listen, we pushed to get larger sizes incorporated, but we were not able to do so because, their creative team wasn't able to manufacture, or whatever the case may be? Are you guys bringing that to the forefront? 9 times out of 10, most of them are not, because the reality is you don't care. The reality is it's not your problem, and you're trying to get a money grab. And
So
that
we do have to say really quick, shout out to the ones that do.
Yes,
like I know
absolutely.
Cece, and I'm sure there's others, but I can just name Cece as someone, especially because she used to be more extended size and now she's down, that she is one person who's like, now that I have my foot in the door, I'm going to work on
Right.
things.
And that's
So
like she said, that's not to say that there aren't those who do, but there's plenty more who do not. And unfortunately, their voices are usually louder and have
yeah,
a bigger impact, and their followings are larger. And again, I think whether they admit it openly or not, they're grateful that they're not us. They're grateful that they don't look like me. They're grateful for that. I've had conversations with influencers who are smaller, and they out of their own mouth are like, girl, you are so brave. Like, I just admire your confidence for me doing the exact same thing they're doing. Because it's more accepted for you to do it versus for me to throw on that crop top. That you don't have a stomach that looks like mine, especially after you haven't had any kids. Yeah, you got stretch marks, you got a little pudge. Nah, baby, I got bellies, okay? I got stretch marks all over the place, and it looks different. And you're telling me I'm brave and I'm confident because that the response is going to be different. And it's even more insulting when they are smaller than me and they're like, oh, I don't know how you could, because I could never. So even in your smaller fat body, you still feel insecure enough to be like, oh, I would never do it. But you think it's absurd that I would. Because
well, I mean, that's where
in
a
the
lot
back
of
of your mind, like that size difference makes a difference.
right, and that's where a lot of plus like 8 comes from, and we've talked about it before in previous episodes, where it's really just a thing within themselves where they're like, well, I could never at that size or even at my size feel comfortable with my body, wear that. So then they are extra mad when larger sizes do, because they're like, if I can't at my size, how dare you at your size? And that's on you. It's your problem, not my problem, is how I feel about that. I'm gonna do me. You do you, and you can keep on hating yourself and thus also hating me. But life is a lot better when you just like accept yourself, love yourself. And yeah, you can still work on changing yourself. Alicia and I are constantly. That's okay, because you always want to be whatever your definition of happy is, but still figure it out for yourself, not how you think other people should. And even if you have stuff you want to change, make sure you still figure out how to love yourself. Make sure you still acknowledge that at your size, no matter what size you are on the scale, you still deserve love. You still deserve respect. You still deserve for people to look at you and see you for all your gifts and talents. Doesn't matter what size you are, whether you're small, fat, small, a fit of fat, like you still deserve it all. And acknowledge that and walk through life with that, even if you try to change or improve things.
Right. And that's what it boils down to. I would love to see more conversation within the plus community about healing. And I think that requires an honesty that a lot of people are not ready for. Many people have built their platforms on saying body positive. I love myself. I love myself. And the moment they get the opportunity to lose weight, suddenly it's like, oh, I hated myself so much when I was large. I was faking the funk. And I'm so glad to be in this space where I'm better. It happens
Like,
so
why not just be
much.
honest about it? Even when you're bigger, like I will talk about the things that make me miserable at this size.
Oh,
Like
because
I
you're
love
not
myself and I
allowed
deserve the
to.
world, but I talk about things that make me,
This,
let's be honest.
the divide within this fat, positive, body positive, whatever space is crazy because there's so much gatekeeping. So it's segregated even within these movements, which is why I'm always telling people I don't subscribe to any one movement. I believe in certain aspects of some of the things that some of these movements are. I understand diet culture, but I'm not so extreme that I am against intentional weight loss. I understand wanting to be positive about your body and how you look and how you feel, but in the same breath, I'm not going to lie if I know that excess weight is hurting me and causing me discomfort or
Right.
exacerbating a health issue that I
Right.
have, and therefore I want to lose it. I'm not going to lie about those things. Like, I don't think there's any one extreme. I think we have to find balance, right? Being at one end or the other end doesn't help anybody. But I think when we're honest with ourselves and our feelings and about how we're trying to cope with those feelings, that's more beneficial to the plus community than just saying, yeah, I'm proud to be fat. You don't have to be proud to be fat to love yourself. You can
Right.
be learning how to love yourself at whatever size and still know that there are changes that I would like to make for me. Nobody has to know what those reasons are. That is between you and God, and or you and the universe, whatever you believe in. It's not anybody else's business why you want to make those changes. And it's okay. It's okay to want those things, but it's also okay to want to love yourself through that process. And wherever you end up in your journey, that you have done the work to heal whatever emotional scars and trauma. Because please believe, if you're fat in this country, you have experienced trauma. You may not even know it because it's existed. If you've been fat your entire life, it's existed your entire life. You grew up in a society that has repeatedly told you you're not worthy, you don't deserve, and you can't have. This is an exclusive club that you can't be in until you are a certain size. So I believe wholly that plus women and plus men, big men, are walking around carrying trauma, and we're just so used to, so many of us, toughening up and just learning to deal with it, that we barely even allow ourselves to access those parts and feel like, dag, like what got said to me hurt. Yeah, I built up an exterior around it and I've learned to let things bounce off of me, but it hurt me. And I need to talk about that in therapy, or, find healthy ways to go about expressing those things, so that when and if I do lose weight, I'm not out here like, yeah, I hated myself so much when I was fat. I couldn't have, because a lot of times we put those limits on ourselves. Like, I won't wear the dress until I lose this amount of weight, or I'm not going to go ziplining until I'm this small, or I'm not going to date until, I'm smaller. Now, you may have a bunch of reasons for wanting to do those things. They may be very valid, and that's fine. It's absolutely fine. But if you're literally just not living your life because you are fat, I don't think that's all on you. I think a lot of that is what has been fed to you, whether subconsciously through media, entertainment, your parents, well-meaning family members and friends over the years, constantly telling you what you should or shouldn't do for yourself. The medical care system that we're in, deal with that trauma, right? Before you get on large platforms and try to lead a movement, and then somewhere halfway in it, and not that you can't change and evolve, but then you're suddenly like, yeah, I hated myself. Because you still have people who are still on their journey, and now you're saying this, you're
Right.
spinning their head for a loop. And now it's like, well, whoa, you just said for the last 2 years, blah, blah, blah. But now you've been able to get weight loss surgery, and now suddenly you feel differently. Are you telling me that everything you said was a lie? Which is why I also place heavy emphasis on people not putting influencers or celebrities on a pedestal. They're
Right.
human, and there's just no one way to know if what you're getting is an accurate truth or is what you're getting commercialism.
Right. Exactly.
So put that vested interest in yourself, put that energy into yourself. You don't have to have to glorify or love the messenger to appreciate the message.
Yep.
And even if they change their mind or they've decided to be more honest, it doesn't mean that what they originally said was wrong either.
Yeah.
But you
I
got to
mean,
be able to separate the person from the message.
I think that that's huge. I think it's really important. And I wish that more influencers were honest. You can say that you have body love and body positivity without trying to pretend like it's all hunky dory and life is perfect all the time, because it is not. And then when you act like it is, it makes the people who maybe the same size or smaller who aren't experiencing that like, well, what's wrong with me? It's because you're not being honest about you. But Alicia, you mentioned a great point in there too about, sort of people holding back on certain things because they want to lose weight or get a certain size. I know it's something that we've talked about a little bit before, because I kind of have it with dating at the moment. I'm busy otherwise, but I have it with that. So we want to know if you guys have certain things that you're just like, well, when I get to a certain size, I will do this or do that. Because I really do try to work to not be like that with most of my things. But there are still certain times where I feel like it's okay that I have this sort of hesitation, this weight. So we're going to jump into that more next week, and we're going to dive into it and talk about it a little bit more. People just having things in life that they're holding back on because of their size. So let us know if you have certain things so that we can talk about that as well. But, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. A great topic, Alicia. I feel like we could talk about it forever.
Yeah.
Any last words?
No, definitely
Oh, wait,
sound
I have
off.
another last word. I have a shameless plug. While I mentioned, everybody has their own different struggles and life paths. With being plus size, we do all sometimes have a struggle. And so I have the site called National Plus Guide, which is setting up, and we're growing and trying to be a directory for all things plus positive. Because there are times where you want to know like what the seats are like at a restaurant, or what doctor is plus positive and not just going to look at your weight. And it's just really, we're trying to make it a safe space to help people find the things that they need. So check it out. If you have recommendations, there's buttons to add businesses. If you are a plus size or plus friendly business, go ahead and add yourselves as well. That's nationalplusguide.com.
Such a beautiful plug there. My closing thoughts were definitely sound down below in the comments or on our IG page at More Than My Size _ the show, and share with us if you feel like there should be a separate labels for plus bodies, or what your personal experience has been. And of course, let us know about limitations you may have imposed on yourself because of your weight. I will say this: all of the limitations that I have imposed on myself because of my weight are ones that are there because that is the rule. Like getting on a roller coaster, I can't get on. I'm too big right now. Like that's not a choice that I'm making. It's one that it just exists. And so I won't be able to do it until I'm smaller, but we can get into that more next week. And of course, while we're shamelessly plugging,
Plug away,
guys,
sister.
make sure that you're shopping AP Young Beauty, because you see this beat. It's AP Young Beauty. You can find me at apyoungblog.com. Of course, I also offer instructional classes, one-on-one consultations, the whole 9 yards. I got you for all your beauty needs. And of course, we want to make sure that you guys are following the More Than My Size page. Make sure you run back a couple of episodes though, in case you've missed anything. Check out the podcast we did with Positive Vibes Maybe. And of course, you guys, we're on all streaming platforms. So if watching YouTube is not your thing, that's perfectly fine. We're anywhere where we can be streamed at, we're there. You can find us there. You can plug in and just listen and go about your day. As always, you guys, we thank you so very much for joining us, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.